Hello, I'm Christy Steves, and I'm here with attorney David Welty, who's authored a book of significant importance called Unfaithful Guardians. So, David, what made you feel compelled to write this book?
Well, Christy, I wrote the book in part to counter what is taught in our schools and universities today, and has been for decades. Sadly, our students are not taught what the founders intended when they wrote and ratified the Constitution, or what some refer to as the original meaning. Instead, they're taught what the Supreme Court says the Constitution ought to mean, which is really quite different than the original meaning. The founders expected the court to understand and then apply the original meaning, and to do that regardless of the consequences. Thomas Jefferson wrote, on every question on construction, we're to take ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. And that's really the purpose of Unfaithful Guardians, to carry the reader back to the time when the Constitution was adopted, to discover and to understand the original meaning, and then to understand how the court has ignored that meaning and the consequences that have resulted.
Tell us about the title, Unfaithful Guardians.
Well, during the debates, while the Anti-Federalists were expressing alarms about the new proposed federal judiciary, Alexander Hamilton tried to calm their fears by explaining in Federalist Paper number 78 that the duty of the Supreme Court will be to serve as the faithful guardians of the Constitution. And what he meant by that was that the court was to guard the high walls that the Constitution had built around Congress and the President. Unfortunately, since the dawn of the 20th century, the court has refused to perform that duty, with the result being that both Congress and our presidents have breached those walls and are exercising powers that the states never gave to the federal government. Hence the title of the book, Unfaithful Guardians.
What's the central theme of your book?
Well, Christy, the book is a book of history and the rule of law. The founders intended that the states would do most governing on domestic matters, not the federal government. James Madison, in Federalist Paper number 46, wrote that the first and the most natural attachment of the people will be to the governments of their respective states. The founders created the central government to be a servant of the states and their people, primarily for the purpose of national defense and for a unified foreign affairs, and to provide a few services on the national level, such as a postal system, a bankruptcy system, a patent law system. But the original meaning makes clear that the federal government was to be one of limited and explicit powers, thus permitting the people of each state to be able to self-govern with no federal interference, and with each state having the power to make choices on a variety of domestic issues, which could be quite different than the choices made by the sister states.